Hi everyone, my name is Gajan, aka Gigi.
And this is Mika.
Victoria's not here with us. And this is A Word at the Table. And we have a very, very, very special guest with us today to help us dive into the topic. Introducing Stephanie Jean.
Yay! Thank you, Gigi, and Mika. I'm Stephanie Jean, and I'm excited to be here at A Word at the Table so we can have a conversation. Hope you guys are ready.
Yeah, and we were just talking before this, this whole situation about getting Stephanie on the podcast was a little too aligned. It was just God all the way. We were just saying, I was actually thinking about Stephanie. I went to college with her. She's like my college friend. She's like the best thing that came out of Adelphi, to be honest. even above my degree. So yeah, I'm like, yo, I need to hit up Stephanie because something with my church there was like, hit up someone that you haven't talked to in a while. And I forgot, obviously. And then talking to Mika during the week, and Mika's like, how's your friend Stephanie? And I'm like, yo, it was crazy. And like other things happened. It was just too aligned for us not to get Steph on here. So thanks so much for joining us.
So before we get into the topic, we're gonna do our bag of questions, our icebreaker question. So you go ahead, Gigi. What's the question?
Yes. Who is your most memorable church lady and why? And I think everyone can say that they have one, I know for me at my current church, Church of the Harvest, Sister Sybil, I'm telling you, that lady is a worship warrior. And when you do something at church, I think you could be literally maybe even picking up a piece of trash. She'll be like, you did such a good job. She's like, you were amazing. Or she'll just lift you up in so many different ways. I remember one time I did something at my church and I actually didn't think I did a good job. I was like, what was I doing? I felt like I wasn't as prepared as I usually am. I don't think I necessarily brought God into it. And I was just doing something and it ended up okay, but I know it could have been way better if I prepared a little bit more. And then Sister Sybil was just she's like, Gigi, you did such an amazing job. You da da da. I was like, oh, thank you. Cause I was actually really feeling down about it. And she really uplifted me. And she's always I'm telling you, you're having a bad day, call Sister Sybil. She'll talk about how beautiful you are, everything. She'll just uplift you in every way. I think that's one of her gifts of encouragement.
So for me, when you asked the question at first, I thought about a negative experience in church, but I'm going to replace it with a positive.
We got those too.
Yeah. My favorite church lady, I think I have two. One is my aunt, Astrid. I don't think we've ever attended the same church, but she's just she's a prayer warrior. She is an amazing, and she's actually my great aunt. She's in her 80s. And I just love her spirit. I've known her all my life and she's been so consistent, with her positive attitude. And she's never been a negative person. And I just admire, I admire her approach to life in general. And her life is very Christ-centered and prayer-centered. She prays, I think 3 or 5 times a day. She has a scheduled prayer life. And her other activities include just calling people on the phone. So she calls me constantly still at 80. She knows my phone number. And if I call her, I don't even have to say who it is. She'll be like, oh, Mickey. She calls me Mickey. And so she's just such a pleasant person. And the other one is Sister Taylor from my old church in New York. And I admire her because she's just happy. And I think oftentimes older Christians are not happy. They're more
grumpy,
loud.
Yeah.
Rather than sunshine. And I just love Sister Taylor's attitude because of like how she is. Like, and I went on a missions trip with her like a few years ago, and I got to know her better. And I just admire her spirit and just the way she carries herself.
Mm,
That's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too. Okay, so I do have one. And so I go to a multicultural church, right? It's definitely not a Haitian church. However, the my church lady, her name is Miss Peta, right? We call her Miss Peta, and it's so interesting as you guys were speaking and sharing your story with the icebreaker. I thought to myself, oh my God, she really is like my person, right? Of like a person that I go to talk about some things in church, and like I feel like the relationship is still developing, only because I was involved in a small group at my church, and I typically go to her small groups because they're broken into groups, and she's the group leader, and I usually pick her because I just noticed that she seemed like down to earth, like down to earth. She seemed really cool. Like yeah, she's a Christian and all that, but like she just seemed more relatable, so to speak.
Yeah.
She just seemed like I could relate to her. And I thought, okay, fine. I like this lady's vibe. I like her energy. And then the last small group, not this last one, but the one prior to that I did, I don't know. We ended, it was in person. This was like, I think before pandemic or something. It kind of ended and I couldn't leave. Like I couldn't walk away. It was the most weirdest.
Oh.
Everyone was saying, oh, goodbye, good night. And I'm just kind of slowly like lurking about like a weirdo. And I'm like slowly approaching her. And I think the reason it happened that way, where I was moving so slow, was because I was having a discussion in my head with God. I was just like, why am I so pulled to this lady? Why do I feel like you want me to connect with her? You know, I don't bang with church people like that. I go to church and I leave like, what's up? Like, I don't need her to know my life. And I was really having this discussion as I'm like slowly walking towards her. And I just really felt God. I was like, no, like it's okay. You could like, she's cool. You could trust her. I'm like, I don't know. So I was like, whatever. So I get to her and I just kind of like, I didn't know what I was gonna say. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna look like a real idiot, like just standing there in front of this lady. And so I get there and I look at her and I'm just like, listen, I don't normally do this. This is very weird for me, but I don't know, like I like you. You know, like
Stephanie wrote the note like, do you want to date me? Yes. Check yes, no, maybe.
should have, right? That would have been so funny. And she goes, okay. I was like, I don't know, I just feel like this like pulling towards you. And so like, I don't know, like, should we exchange numbers or something? It was the weirdest thing I've ever done in my life. And she goes, of course, you know, no problem. And you know, after that, I remember getting in my car. I was like, oh my God, that was so weird. Oh my goodness. But you know what? Because at the end of it, now I think it's been maybe a year or two. She texts me from time to time. She checks up on me, which is really nice. We actually have been trying to make plans to like go out to eat for the past 2 years, but this summer we're like, for sure we're doing it. So it's kind of really nice. I've never had a bond like that ever with anyone in church, because like I said, I really don't. I was really, but I don't bangs with it. For many reasons, I'm sure you guys have discussed on your podcast. And so it's like, oh, so it's nice to see that her family, her husband's really nice. They're really nice, and it's just really great. Like when I passed my license, I was telling my friends, my family, and everyone, and like she popped into my head, and I was like, oh wow. And I hesitated at first. I'm like, I'm really not used to sharing my life with church folks. But I was like, no, it's Miss Peta, y'all look cool. You text her about. So yeah, so that's my short, long story of how I have a church lady.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love how you said like she just seemed down to earth, because I think that's really hard. It's kind of sad. Like you would actually think at church you're going to experience people where you could open up and like connect with, but unfortunately we've had like a lot of bad experiences with church people. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all people.
Yeah.
But I think, we often get the negative than like the positive, like, oh yeah, you know what, everyone was like uplifting me and encouraging and things like that. it's kind of sad, but I think we all have those memorable people that we can be like, yo, they really held me down, you know?
For
Absolutely.
sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. I didn't think it was possible, but I've talked to her about some hard things that were happening at the time. And I remember thinking to myself, why do I trust this woman so much? Like, I don't get it.
Mhm.
But I was like, all right, God, I'm gonna go with it because you work in mysterious ways or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's
And that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think God knows what we need to, even if
Yeah.
we're afraid, like you were saying, if you were stepping and you didn't know, but you was like, all right, let me just talk to her. So that was kind of a good segue too, like kind of
yeah,
step
exactly.
into something you're not sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah, today we're going to talk about the topic of taking a leap of faith. And I'm not sure exactly how the idea, oh, actually, now I know. So the idea of taking a leap of faith came to mind for me personally. I'd say like probably it's been on my mind for the last 2 years or so because I am contemplating a big change in my life where I never envisioned I would take this path. So I've been praying about it, meditating on it. And as I've been thinking about it, God brought Stephanie to my heart because I know that a few years ago, she made a huge career switch. And although I don't know you very well, Steph, I do remember that as a memorable thing. Like, what? She did that? So I wanted to talk to you today about taking a leap of faith because, I think it's something that is really relatable because there are times where, we may want to make that change. And sometimes it's not a big change. It could be small. And, we're afraid to and we hesitate. And you think about, what if this doesn't work out the way that I envision? Or you may be worried that you don't know exactly how to make that transition, or you don't want to make a mistake or take any risk. And sometimes we may want to look into a crystal ball and ensure like we're really making the right decision because we really like for me as a type A person, I always plan things out and it really makes me feel like I'm on shaky ground when I'm not in control and when I don't know what the future looks like, which no one knows what the future looks like, but when you're taking yourself out of your comfort zone, it could be very uncomfortable. So, with that, we're going to jump into our leap of faith. And so, Steph, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your moment or decision to take that leap of faith?
Sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. And by the way, I do agree with everything you said. It's all of that and then some. So for me, I guess I could start by telling you guys a little bit about myself. I am so recently I just became an LMSW. So I'm a social worker, but now I'm licensed master as a social worker, which is the end goal of my story. Well, not really the complete end goal, but this was long overdue in the making, I think, in the process. So I currently work as a rape sexual assault therapist. And I have, a caseload and I'm out here doing what I'd love to do most, helping people, counseling people, guiding them and helping them, I guess, figure things out, so to speak, coping skills, whatever you could think of. And I like working in the field of trauma because trauma is all around us, right? And often we may not realize it. And I think the pandemic really helped so many people understand the magnitude of like the impact that the trauma has because let's face it, it was sudden, it was unprepared for, we didn't know, so that's what we consider to be one of the things about trauma, right? Often it may not be foreseeable and it could be sudden. It's not always that case, but that's what it is. So I like working with trauma. I like working to help people overcome it. I like working to help people cope with it and help them realize it's not a death sentence. Because I think that's one of the big things, people struggling with PTSD, anxiety, depression, all these things. And so as a therapist, I really do enjoy that work currently. And I've been doing that for the past, I want to say, 2 years, which has been great. And I'm really enjoying that. Now, let's take a quick trip down memory lane. Prior to this, I actually graduated with Gigi. We went to Adelphi, as she mentioned, that's the homie. And I think we both graduated with bachelor's in accounting. We were in the accounting program. That's where I met her. And I'm a very type A, like you said. So I certainly had everything planned out. Like I stepped onto that campus. I was like, all right, 4 years. That's what they gave me. And that's what the financial loans gave me. Not, not a session more. And so I was like, cool. So I planned everything out and I graduated. And I was like, all right, the next step is you're going to go get a master's, because that's kind of what they were really putting on to us. Like, oh, get that 5th year, get your master's, and then you sit for the CPA exam, and then you're good. And I'm like, all right, great. I'm here to make this money. I don't care about nothing. I'm on paper, and that's it. So immediately, of course, my senior year at Adelphi, I decide I'm going to go to grad school. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this 5th year thing. And I apply. So I get into grad school and I complete that within a year. And so now I'm like, I don't know, maybe 23, I think. And I have a master's and I'm waiting. I'm going on interviews to hear back from different companies, CPA firms. And I get an interview with a mid-sized firm in the city. And so I'm thinking to myself, oh, awesome, great. Here I am, I signed my bonus. I'm young, most money I've ever made in my life. So I was like, yeah. I was excited. I'm like, this is awesome. I felt like I was gonna paper everywhere. You get this, So I was enjoying it. And not only that, when I started working there, I realized I had opportunity to work with the international group. So a lot of the international group came from Europe. People spoke French and other languages. And I was like, oh, I'm Haitian. I got this. So I was like, yo, I want to go to the international side. And so they said, sure. So that's exactly what they did. That's where I started working. And I was taking it in like any new job you get. And again, you're new. And I didn't really have anyone to guide me in the accounting field. Like most people in my family, they're in the medical field. And so I was like, all right, here I am going to do my thing. So I start working. And it's really cool. Of course, it's like everything they say it is. It's the black card expense. It's the, your flights are paid. Your hotel rooms are paid. Your food is expensive. I'm like, oh, lit. I'm like, yes, I'm happy. And then a year goes by and I'm like, all right, it starts to be a little less glamorous. Right. And I'm entering year 2. And I start to find myself stagnant, right? I'm starting to get a bit stagnant. I don't really have, as they say, a joie de vivre for the job or to wake up in the morning and go to work. And now I'm like, oh, subways, oh, people, having to work. And let's not forget, the long hours, right, that existed in the traveling, but also when I was home working, from home, that also consisted of long hours during busy season, right? And so I was like, oh gosh. So I'm doing my thing and I realized I don't care about this. Like, I don't care about Excel. I don't care about these spreadsheets. I don't care about these bottom line dollars. Like, it was really soul sucking. And so as the second year is going on, I became friends with one of the HR managers. And she's a very sweet woman, very nice, very supportive. And I had a conversation with her. And I think I was terrified because I'm like, oh my God, if I talk to her, they're going to fire me, because I still didn't know what I was going to do. So I talked to her and she goes, yeah, like, listen, it happens, take your time. Like, she kind of encouraged me to kind of like keep trying. So I was like, all right, fine. So I didn't want to just quit. I started to feel, like I said, pieces of my soul just leave me. I was like, oh my God, I really hate what I do. And I started to get to this place where I'm sure some people can relate, where you get to work and you're like, I'm going to watch YouTube. I'm going to watch YouTube. So I'm like, all right, I got spreadsheet and I got YouTube. I'm like, and then it came to, and at that time I was like, you know what? Starbucks is right outside. All right, 4 trips to Starbucks, 4 trips. And like, I would come back and like, it's only 12. Like, I did so much. So I just that instead of, kind of like quitting, I decided, you know what, maybe it's the auditing side of things that I don't like. Let me try taxation. And so I got myself transferred to the taxation department. And now I stopped traveling because the traveling was also taking a toll on my mental health. So there were times where, like, I would only be home for like the weekend and then I'll be on another assignment. And I was just like, oh, it was just not good. So I was like, maybe if I'm home more, I'll like the job better. Great. I went into taxation and I got there. I had my own desk. Things are going great. And then, of course, busy season, I find myself at the office leaving at like 8, 9, 10. I'm like, oh, what is going on here? You know? And I'm just like, why am I here at 10 o'clock? Like, why? you know, I find and I don't know if you've ever like worked in any buildings in the city. I found myself at that late hour looking through the windows at other buildings and other workers. I'm like, oh my God, solidarity. Like, what kind of
You're like help writing in the window.
exactly help me. So I'm like, oh gosh. And then the thing is, I'm a person, when I step into a place, I like to figure out everything about it and kind of figure out where am I going to fit in and what do I want out of this, right? So obviously I'm in this career field. I'm observing partners, right? Because that's to the field of accounting, at least in my perspective, what I wanted was if the highest level was to become a partner, then that's what I want, right? And so I'm observing their lives and I'm like, oh my God, if I am not a partner yet and I'm sitting there and I hate it so much, I'm just not gonna make it to partner. I'm just not. And I would see them sometimes have their kids come in and like after school, a kid is sitting in a cubicle doing homework. I'm like, damn, that's the life. Like, okay. And so I'm like, I don't like this. I just really can't do this. So after that period of time, it wasn't even a full year in the position. I was like, this is not fair to the company. It's not fair to me. I can't do this anymore. It's not fair to the clients I'm working on these teams with, because I'm not really giving it my all. I was like, I've got to go. Now, the process of me finally listening to that voice was unbelievable. Because as I tell the story, what I didn't say is in the background of that, every time I went home, every time I was on the subway, I was consumed with leaving. Consumed with it, trying to create plans because I sometimes I take the wheel from God. Yes, I admit it. And I'm creating plans in my head. I'm like, right, if I leave, I gotta have this job lined up. I gotta do this. I'm like planning away, and I'm like, I got student loans. And then the other thing that you wouldn't think that started to happen was I started to say, well, how dumb am I to leave? I spent 5 years in school and collected XYZ amount of loans. Why would I walk away from a job that others would consider good paying? You're making money. Like, why would you do this? This is so stupid. You're so stupid. Like, I was just going on and on about myself. And then I got to a place where I was like, I really felt the pressure of like, no, you have to leave. There were days I would arrive to work and I kid you not, I would go inside, put my stuff down. And like I said, coffee run had to happen. And I would just stand there in front of the building in the street, unable to go in. That's how much I knew I couldn't do it anymore. And I would call my friends and I'd be like going on and on about how I have to leave, I have to leave, I have to leave. And I'm just like, oh my God. And then the biggest fear I would say that really helped me was I just couldn't shake disappointing my mom, my family. I couldn't. It held me there, I would say, probably a year longer than it should have. That fear, which is a whole topic of its own, but that fear really kept me there. And I was like, I kept imagining and role playing like the conversation with her, like me telling her I'm leaving this job, me telling her this, and I just kept hearing all this negative responses, of like, oh my goodness, or like, what are you gonna be doing? The Haitian, I was like, oh, there goes that judgment.
Right.
Oh God. And so I think I don't know what happened. And I think I had reached beyond reach one of my points. And I think I was on the phone with one of my friends and they were like, listen, you just have to do it. At this point, like you're talking yourself in circles. You already know you don't want to be here. You have to do it. So funny thing. So I was like, all right, fine. Not a problem. I think I got to work. I don't remember the specifics, but I got to work either the next day or a couple of days. And I went to the HR lady who I'm cool with. And I said, hey, yeah, I can't do this. And she goes, oh, I knew it. I was like, I'm sorry. I was like, this is not for me. Like, it just didn't fit. And the people were nice because what I realized is when I was on clients and going to businesses and doing audits, I enjoyed talking more to the people there about their lives than I did about the audit, than I did about, oh, what's the bottom line? What's the year end? What's the statement? What's this? I didn't care. And I cared more about the people's lives than a 1065. Like, I don't care about that. So I was like, okay. So I told her, and of course, I think it must have been Thursday or Friday. And the reason I remember this is because after we had that conversation, I remember going home, and then it was a Saturday evening. I drove into the city with a friend, walked into the office building, and packed up my entire desk. Packed up my entire desk, came to work Monday with nothing at my desk, just waiting, like, yeah, I need to get out ASAP. I didn't even give 2 weeks. And it's not because I didn't want to be courteous. It was just the urgency of I needed to get out was just large. And so I was like, yeah, I gotta go. And I remember it being so vivid that that Monday I was sitting at a desk and I was like, damn, there's nothing at this desk. You already packed up. And I met with other people in HR, and they were very supportive. Like even I guess the director, if that was his title, he was like, listen, you're a nice person. You're a good kid. Because, he called me a kid at the time, which you're a good kid. You're going to be fine. And they were really generous, with their severance package and everything. So I was grateful. So I took the leap. Literally on the train home, I think I was sitting there like, wow, I don't have a job tomorrow. I don't have a job. Like it just set in like, I don't have a job. What do I do? And more importantly, when I get off this train, I have to see my mom. You know? I was like, what
mom, you could just hear her with the finger like
yes. I was like, no, what am I gonna do? So I decided that so I'm thinking in my head, deep in thought, and I'm on the train sitting to Long Island Railroad at the time. And oh my goodness, let me tell you, I don't know if it was God. I don't know what it was, but I choose to believe it's God, because the woman across from me, I remember her looking like we made eye contact, because on the train, I definitely try heavy not to make eye contact with people. Yeah.
Yes, that's a must in New York. Like, you make too much eye contact. Now you're in a relationship. Now you dating the mom that you made an eye contact with. So no.
That's so true. So I don't know what happened, but somehow I slipped up and we locked eyes. And mind you, I have the eyes of sadness. She must have been able to read my entire aura. And she looks at me and she goes, don't worry, everything's gonna be fine. Everything is gonna be okay.
Wow.
Tears flooding into my eyes, but like at the time, this was like pre-therapy, so I was very prideful about my tears. So I was like, oh, you're not gonna cry in front of these people. So I was like, oh, and I looked at her and I kind of just nodded my head like, thank you. And I got off the train and I got home and I was like, okay. And I remember I walked into my house, went straight past everyone into my bedroom, and I dropped to my knees and I was like, what have I done, Lord? Like, what have I done? And more importantly, I feel like I'm listening to you telling me to leave, to take that leap. And I leap, and now I'm like terrified. So I prayed for like a few minutes and I got up, and then like, I don't know if my mom came over to me or I came out to her. I don't really know, but she's like, are you okay? And I told her like, yeah, I left the job. And it was the most awkward thing ever, because like she just looked at me and I'm like, I was ready for any of the rehearsed lines that I had said to myself that I imagined she would say. And it's gonna be a little bit of a downer because I don't even remember what she said, because I think I was so worked up about it. I don't think I expected something more, but she just looked at me and said, okay. And I was like, okay.
After all this anxiety I put myself through, and you just had one word
response, not a Haitian mom response at all.
Yeah. I was like, I have an ulcer. Like from the amount of
heart palpitations.
Ulcer. I'm stressed. I spent over 6 months like staying there longer than I should, like because I didn't want to disappoint her. And she was just very like, okay. You could see in her face that like she didn't really know what else to say, but she probably could see in my face like I couldn't take her saying anything else. I just, please don't say. Yeah. I was like, wow. And that's what started that journey. And so I say that because from that point on, it was 2015, the end of 2015. I remember thinking, okay, what am I gonna do? And I was unemployed for a couple months, I would say. I don't know if I was unemployed for the full 6 months or whatever I think it's 1 year unemployment gives you or whatever it was. But I was on that. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I have like bills to pay. I have other bills besides student loans. What am I going to do? And I was just like really upset. And I remember having like, I had a Walmart a Walmart card because I had been looking for jobs and I didn't know what direction to go in. I kind of was waiting on God, but like, I'm not patient. Newsflash. I don't know if you guys know. I'm not patient. I often visualize God looking at me like, yeah, this one, she just don't wait, you know? And so,
Me too.
right. I'm not. So I'm like, I'm looking for a job. And I'm like, oh, it's been a month. Oh, it's been 2 months. Like, this should be happening. And especially since I felt like God really pushed me to leave. Like, he really, like, it wasn't just me desiring to leave. Like, there was a calling, like, I have to leave this place. So I'm like, all right, God, like, I listen to you. And now what? I'm sitting here with degrees, doing nothing, and feeling like I'm a huge disappointment and failure, and I have bills. And I think, to add insult to injury, I had a at the time I wasn't up on my credit card game, so the only credit card I had was like from Walmart, that had given it to me when I was in college, and then I had like a balance on it, like nothing crazy, like $200-300, and them suckers sent me to collection.
No.
I was tight. I was like, really? Like, I'm trying to collect this unemployment to like handle it, and you guys sent me. I've never been more insulted in my life, so I was. And I probably like, you didn't pay, so that makes sense. But I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. I take it personal. And so what I did was, the minute I got, I guess, my check, I took that, paid the whole thing off, and I called them. I said, close this account. Boom. And I was like, yeah, you take that, making me like garbage.
Collection.
I was like, oh, but then of course later on I learned it was not good to close a long-standing account, but whatever. You live in
right.
That really started, that made me feel like, wow, are you ever gonna like get yourself together? At that point you're like 24, I think. I'm like getting older and I'm like panicking. And then, you know, like anything else, lots of prayer, definitely lots of prayer. But like, you know, I don't think as human beings that we can live life without fear. Fear is just something that exists. However, with the fear, I just kept choosing to believe that God wouldn't have me look stupid. That's really how I saw it, right? And I'm just like, God, like, if you're doing something, it's for you and your glory. So like, I can't look stupid. Like, we just not doing it. I can't look stupid.
You're not gonna push me to do something without having everything aligned.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just in a point that I have to wait, but
Yeah.
I know you have everything aligned and ready for me. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I remembered I got a job unrelated, didn't think that this job really was what God wanted me to go for. And I had at that point figured out, because I took some time to really talk to God, and I realized I want to be in the helping profession. Like, I really want to do therapy. Like, that's all I knew at the time, right? I didn't know if it was going to be social work, psychology, or whatever, but I knew I wanted to be in therapy. But I couldn't get a job into anything. I didn't know what to do. And I also was terrified of like making any more large commitments, because I think I was still a little bit like suffering PTSD from the fact that I chose a whole career and now I don't like it. So I was like, so it made me slow down, but then I was like, I still need money. So I got a job working as an HR associate for a company. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, I'm doing HR. This is still not what I want to do. I still don't like this, but I need a paycheck. So I got this job and I'm driving like 45 minutes in traffic, an hour. So I go from train, you know, commuting, to now driving. And I'm like, I really don't want to do this. And I think before the year was up at that job, I remember I was praying to God. I was like, God, I can't be here. Like, I can't spend more than a year. I don't know why, for some reason, I didn't want to spend more than a year there as I wanted to do. And amazing thing happened, which different part of my story, but there is this organization that I'm affiliated with, and I had done some volunteer stuff, and I also had they had helped me out with some stuff. And I think I had told them like, hey guys, like, keep me in mind if you ever need anything. And someone emailed me from that company out of the blue, and they're like, hey, would you like to do an interview about child abuse and things like that? And I was like, sure. And like, it's gonna be on TV. I said, oh, sure, like whatever. I've never been on TV before, but I'm the kind of person, I think yes is a good thing to say. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do your interview. And it was a heavy topic. Again, different discussion we could have for another time. But I went on and I remember loving it so much. And I think in the green room, he was observing me. My mom was there too. And when I came out, and I kid you not, he goes, oh my God, like, you present so well. Like, you articulate yourself so well. You speak so well. We have an opening. Would you be interested in coming to work with us in our education department? I'm like,
wow.
yeah. And I said yes because the organization deals with child abuse, domestic violence, all these things, like trauma related stuff. And I'm just like, sure. And I'm like, oh my God. In my mind, I was excited because I'm like, oh my God, I'm one step closer to like therapy because I know they do therapy there. I will be a therapist, but I was grateful. Literally, I accepted and I started working there. And that was 2017. So mind you, I left my job in 2015. So now we're in 2017. I left that other job and now I'm here. And I started in March. And I was excited because I get to now talk about topics that are important to me, that I think is relevant to the world, that most of us go through. And so I really enjoyed the job. I worked at it and I went to different schools and did healthy relationships kind of workshop for teenagers. We had candid conversations and open conversations. And so it was really great and I'm enjoying it. In that process, after a year there, I felt the peace because the whole time, by the way, I know I'm not saying this often, but please know that my conversations with God does not stop, right?
Mm.
Your traditional, it's not always drop on your knees, right? I know when I left the job that day, I came home, I had to drop on my knees because I couldn't stand up. But the reality was, I talk to God anywhere, like in my car, in the shower, like anywhere. As long as I have consciousness, I'm talking. So I've been talking. What do I do now? Do I go back to school? Like, how dumb is that to go back to school? Like you already have degrees. So what do? I look it up. I look up ways, and I think I called New York State, and I'm like, so I already have a master's, and it says here for me to be a therapist, like you need a master's or whatever. And so like, I already have one, so can I just sit for the license? That was literally what I was like, gung ho, I'm here. I don't want to do any more schooling. And they're like, yeah, you have a master's in a complete different discipline.
Yeah,
Not gonna work.
It didn't work. I was like, oh, because the master's I had was a master's in taxation. So I was just like, oh, I was like, really? Like, yeah, you have to go to school. I was like, oh my God. So I was like, all right, fine. So I had decided that for sure I know this is what I want to do because I've been working there for a year. I really enjoy what I'm doing. So I applied and I got into a master's program for social work. And it was a really great program. I was able to intern also at the same job. I think last year, yeah, because I graduated in May of 2021. So I interned there at the job while also working at the other department. And when it was all done, I got hired a month before graduation. So I'm like, look at God, look at God.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes. Oh, the way it happened was unreal because as the months were approaching, I'm thinking to myself, girl, you're about to graduate in May. Where are you going to work? Now you are, a social worker and, you have to take your licensing exam, but also where you're going to work. Because now I was beginning to feel that sense of, again, stagnancy. I was about the education position anymore, going to teach. It was getting redundant. And I'm just like, okay. And at that point, I had been there. Like I said, I started in 2017, went to about 2021. So somebody do the math out here. Right. And I've been there and I was like, and I've been committed. And I was grateful to that department because they allowed me to go part-time my last year of school because school picked up and I couldn't keep full-time work and school. So I had to go part-time work. And that was another leap of faith because I'm like, God, I still have bills. Like I'm like, you keep cutting my money and I have bills. So I did it. And I was in the internship. I think it was February, and I'm like, oh my God, because other people at school, like, oh, I applied to this position, I applied to that position. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't applied to anything. What am I doing? What's going on? But I'm like, I just kept thinking, but you ordained these steps, so I go ahead of you. I've gone ahead of you. I know what it's like to like chuck the deuces to the Lord. And like, I got this. So I was like, this time I'm really trying not to. So I didn't really like, I wasn't motivated to apply anywhere else. But at the same time in my head, I'm like, but you're about to graduate in 3 months. You have no idea. So I was like, all right. So one day, I think so part of my internship is that I ran a rape sexual assault group, and the group leader, I was observing his group and being a part of it. We were co-facilitating. And we were in a staff meeting, and out of nowhere, he announces that he had taken his licensing exam and he passed it and he's leaving. I was like, he's leaving.
Wow.
Funny thing is, I was excited for him and happy that he was leaving. I didn't even put two and two together that there was an opening now. You know, I didn't even think about it until I want to say a couple weeks go by, and my supervisor goes, "Oh, we're gonna have an opening, and so you know, hopefully someone takes it." I'm like, "Someone? Me? Like, I'm the someone?"
You mean the co-facilitator?
Yeah, so I thought about it and I was like, sure. So I put my, you know, you do your due diligence, you put your applications and everything in, and I go. And of course I get the position, and like, so when would you like to start? So now at this point, we're in May, though I think the other person finished off in April. And I'm like, look at God, like literally toe for toe.
Wow.
We're in May, and they're like, when would you like to start? And like she had proposed a date, and that date was a week before the week of graduation. And I'm like, yeah, can I at least have 1 week off, like to get myself? So I put it for literally the weekend after graduation. That Monday, I started working.
Wow. Look at God.
Right? Right?
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
It really was.
Wow.
So that's the big chunk of the story. But I know you have more questions, but
Yeah.
that's
So
how we got.
okay, so you answered a lot of my questions, but one question that I think came up is, I think for what's interesting to me in your story is that like you had to stop and take a break from what you were doing, that path you were following, in order for God to, for you to sit still, for you to hear from God. Because when you were busy in your accounting job, you weren't able to focus on what exactly God wanted you to do, what steps you needed to take. Because I think oftentimes, like, we may think like, well, you know, I gotta secure, reality, pay the bills, and I can't just, you know, leave my, and yeah, that may not be the reality for everybody or everybody's story, but I think it's interesting to me that like you really had to stop and be still in order to hear. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yes. I don't know a lot of verses by heart, like in terms of where they're from, but like that verse that talks about be still, yeah, right, and know He's God. Oh my goodness,
Yes.
I felt like it haunts me, you know, like seriously, because during those years, there was a whole year where that be still was just everywhere, and I really felt like that's what He wanted.
Mhm.
Like, oh my God, how do I be still? You know, like being still, because I think the stillness was in those months of unemployment, right? And of like kind of like not knowing what I was gonna do, really being frustrated with myself, but also not having an option, but to sit, right? And so I think for me and my personal personality and the way I am, it takes drastic measures to get me to be still.
Mhm.
And so I felt like I was like, nope, no jobs. Nobody's gonna answer you back. No one's gonna, hit you up on your resume. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I had to be still. And it kind of like I reached a point kind of like I exhausted myself with trying
Mhm.
to my own will, like if that makes sense, right? Trying to will things of my own power, I should say. And I eventually kind of settled in and I was just like, okay. And I remember I sought therapy. So that's when I started my therapeutic journey, right? I walked into my therapist's office, I think after one or two sessions, and I kind of basically said, listen, I have a plan. You know, by 30, I want XYZ things. I've quit my job. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to get my life together. And I think she encouraged me. That's when I was first introduced to journaling and kind of this concept of like slowing down. She really had to, and I'm saying this like it happened overnight. It did not. We had back and forth before I accepted that I could let go of this notion and just be still. And then I started to kind of, I took the journaling and started to like pray and talk to God and be like, okay, I'm going to be still. What should I do? What do I need to do? You know, what's going on with me? And I kind of really felt this kind of just natural feeling of, yeah, you want to help people. You want to be a therapist, right? And I remember thinking to myself, wow. And I said, sure, that's what I'm going to do. So I kind of was dedicated to that. And that's the only way I was able to be still. Like, I feel like I'm a person that till this day, I was telling Gigi that even when I see God start talking to me about being still again, it still makes me a little queasy. Because I'm like, oh, you're about to do something that's going to drive me crazy. And I don't like it. And I already know I don't like it. So I'm like, ooh, be still. But I got to tell you, it is an important ingredient in leaping. If you're going to take a leap of faith, there's going to be that moment where you have to eventually settle in and hear from God. especially when we're talking about leaping. So I'm like, no, you have to hear from God before you leap, and you have to hear from God throughout your leaping. Because for me, there would be weeks and I would panic, like, oh my God, he's left me. I'm dumb. Why I listen to this ghost voice? I don't know why. So I'm like, oh no. But then he would reassure me, whether it's a phone call, a friend would show up, I get a random text message. It would be very aligning. So certainly being still, very important key ingredient to leaping.
I love that you said that, like, he sends people to talk to you, to encourage you, because I definitely feel like that's happened to me before as well, like where I don't know what's happening and then someone will just talk to me and they have no idea that, like, I'm thinking something, I'm going through something, and then they just send you this encouraging message or, like, some type of word of encouragement, of support, and you're just like, okay, God, thank you. Like, and it's like he knows what each of us needs in the timing that we need it. Like, I think that, like, we always want to do things in our time, and being still doesn't work with our schedule and our plans. And it's like, but when you do wait on God and you take that time to be like, okay, God, I'm going to trust you, even though I don't see the next step, I'm going to trust you. His timing is literally perfect. It's so perfect on how he aligns. Like, when you look back on it, then you're like, oh, snap. Like, thank God I listened, and thank God I didn't, try to do things on my own. So,
yeah. And one thing that I think, many things stick out to me in your story, but I think particularly in the last thing that you said that really brings it home is how open I think you've been with being vulnerable throughout your journey. Like when you went to the HR person that you were close to at work in the accounting firm, and how you sought that, just, as an outlet, as a person to speak to. I think it's also important because for me, sometimes when I'm doing something I'm uncertain about, I'll just like do it in my own little echo chamber and not invite anybody else in, because I'm like, I don't know if I sound crazy to myself, I must sound crazy to other people too. So I think it's really cool that that you've been transparent and you continue to be transparent, and maybe it's evident in like the fact that you are a therapist and you've been through that. Maybe therapy is still a part of your journey. So I think it's just really important, like that transparency, and that's something I can work on and implement.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. If you can, that would make my heart happy. I'm on a mission to help people learn to be okay with vulnerability. It is not a bad word. It is, and I could say that because me, vulnerability, where? Never. And that was me up until it wasn't me. And I learned so much from that. And it did play a role in helping me with that leap of faith of kind of God pointing me, like, talk to that person, trust that person, right? So that's kind of the other thing I'd say. And thank you for pointing that out, which is you do need to kind of find places to open up and who to open up to strategically, which I think says a lot more of how when God is sending you, it requires kind of like he'll bring the people, he'll send the people, he'll who is the right person to talk to at the right time, right? Because like I said, I don't trust people easily. And so when I found people that I trusted that really kind of had my back, I was like, oh.
Church ladies that like, you just find people that you just feel comfortable saying, hey, I kind of want to talk about this. I would love like mentorship or, just advice on something. Yeah, so I definitely think that God helps you in that process too, to help you to be vulnerable too.
Absolutely. And there's a thing in the journey. I don't know if it's this way for everyone, because I don't know everyone's individual relationship with God and their belief. But for me, I need a little bit of confirmation along the way, right? And so I leaped, and by my definition, I was in agony, because waiting is not my thing. But I think there were moments where he really did send some breadcrumbs, right? to kind of sustain me. And it was just like, one of them was, I don't remember, I can't even tell what year or when it happened, but I just remember being in a conversation with my mother or around my mother, and she said, I don't know why you became an accountant. You always wanted to be a therapist. I'm like, what? And then she's like, yeah, when you were a kid, you used to like role play therapy with your sisters. I'm like, oh
Wow. Like, mom, why didn't you tell me this?
That's amazing.
After all these years, after graduating with these degrees, now you want to tell me,
Thanks,
like,
Mom.
right. So in my head, I thought to myself, I literally said to her, I was like, what? Why did you say that? I mean, she said, she gave me some response back about not wanting to like, get in my way or whatever, which I get, because I after she said that to me, I reflected on it, and I'm like, would I have listened to her at the time? You know, if she had told me at 18, like, oh, you should do this, I probably wouldn't have. And so I guess in a way, I'm still glad she didn't tell me. But when she said it, it was even more confirmation that I was on the right path, because it made me feel like, look, this, I was meant to do this, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing. And also I think like oftentimes, like you were saying, if we try to rush God's timeline and try to do things our way, like sometimes, you know, it has to take that time for you to walk through certain things, for you to have those moments where he speaks to you, because otherwise you would not know God the way that you know him now had you had it the easy way. So
Yeah.
yeah, every step in the journey is important.
Very.
Yeah. And I loved how you said like the breadcrumbs along the way too, because I feel like, as you know, we're talking about a leap of faith, like that's the whole point of faith. Like we don't know every part, we don't know the whole picture. And it's little small stuff that God is like giving us, not because he's like a cruel God or anything like that, but it's also like a faith walk. So we also need to have faith and knowing that, I can trust you and building your trust. And like you were saying, Mika, like, getting to know God in a deeper way. Because if we knew everything, we wouldn't trust in God. We wouldn't want to lean on him. We wouldn't take those leaps of faith if we just knew everything on our own. So I think it's also like building your relationship as well.
It certainly has. I can say that, in my personal, like I call it that personal vertical relationship. It certainly has helped me grow a lot. I'm still growing. I'm still growing in it. And it's like, wow, it blows me away.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. And I love, like, you had that moment with your mom. And I think like sometimes too, those moments really help. Like when you look back and you're like, yo, that was a moment where God really spoke to me in this situation. Like he's going to continue to help me every step of the way. Like I don't have to be scared. I mean, obviously in those moments, sometimes we are scared and we want to do our own thing. But like remembering those moments, like, oh, snap, he spoke to me like here, like this
Mhm.
I was able to trust him and look what happened. Like it helps you continue that journey of, taking that leap of faith, whatever it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm a very sentimental person. So anyone who was a part of that journey, anyone who was sent by God, I just feel such gratitude for them, such love, because they did not know there were times that I was in very dark places, right? Mentally and emotionally. And then here comes a message, or here comes a person, or here comes someone. And I'm just like, thank God they were obedient to whatever made them reach out to me. Thank God they were obedient for coming and thinking of me and sending me love and showering me with love. It just, or being with me, hanging out with me, whatever it was, to pull out that, because in this journey, like life doesn't stop. And I think that's what it is, right? I don't want this to sound like it's a magical thing. No, every day of this journey that I went through for these past 5 years, probably more because we're in 2022 now, um, every day was still life, and I had my ups, I had my downs, I had depression, I had negative thoughts. There were moments where I was mad at God. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And for the most part, I held my breath while doing it, right? I have this quote that I say often is like, doing it afraid. And I only say that because I discovered that quote during my time, during that initial walk of like leap of faith and figuring things out. I had to, like, it came to me and I thought to myself, that's what I need to hold on to. I need to remind myself I'm walking with God and I'm choosing faith, but I'm terrified, but I'm going to walk anyway. I rather walk trembling than forfeit my destiny. You know, that's how I want it. That's kind of how I see that.
You're giving me chill stuff.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, like that really hits home. Yeah, this is amazing. I'm so glad that we were able to get some time with you. Thank you for your patience today. Thank you for sharing a beautiful story. I feel like we have another episode to do again because there's so much more to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yes. So with that, I don't know if you have anything else, Gigi.
No, that's it for me.
So I wanted to leave you guys, the listeners, viewers, with a few verses that you can read in your own time. The whole chapter of Hebrews 11 talks about faith in action, but specifically, Hebrews 11:1 is often quoted and the definition of faith. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So really, like, having faith in God is a demonstration of the unknown, of not knowing. So even if naturally you are a person who likes to be in control, a person who wants to know the future, unfortunately that's not reality. No one can know the future. But having faith in God and seeking his guidance and seeking him in every step in our journey certainly helps us along the way, and it helps us not prolong the journey longer than it has to be. And another verse, which I didn't even know you sought counseling, but I had this verse prior to us even talking. It was Proverbs 11:14 that says, "For lack of guidance, a nation falls, but victory is won through many advisors." So that really talks about, it's important to seek godly counsel when you are making decisions, not just, advice from people, but also sitting down and meditating on the word, and meditating on what God wants to speak to you personally. And Steph, it sounds like you did that along the way and continue to do that. And I think as Christians, it's a big part of our lives when we really relinquish our control to God, and he really will not let us down because his promises are sure and certain. So with that, I will close. And thank you so much for listening. Steph, again, thank you for joining us. And
thank you.
Thanks, Steph. And congrats again on your license.
Yes.
I will be scheduling a therapy session.
For real. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, y'all. Any last words or anything you want to say, Steph or Mika?
I don't know. I think if there's any last words, is that in your relationship with God, and as he's bringing you through your journey, there might be a lot of leaps, and with each leap, it's a lesson learned. It's like your faith grows, and you will feel the same fear every time, but remember that you leaped before, and he didn't fail you, and he won't, and that's it. So that way, it makes those moments where you have to leap, big or small moments, it makes it a bit bearable. And because I remind myself now my license, and I'm like, what's next, God? And I'm like, another leap is about to come. I know it. And I'm just excited now. Instead of just being afraid, I'm also excited. So I have other emotions.
Awesome. I can't wait to see where your journey takes you. And I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot. Thank you for having me, guys. I really love talking about these topics. So anytime.
Nice. Thank you, Steph. And yeah, this was definitely so encouraging. I'm going to take a leap tomorrow. I don't know.
That's just that, Gigi.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for tuning in. This is A Word at the Table. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in.